Recording progress.
I'd like to thank everybody for joining me today. Today, I want to talk about the 5 Ds of an unplanned business exit. We talk a lot about transition planning, but today I really want to focus on those unplanned exits, those things that just, happen in life. And if we're not prepared for it as a business owner, it could ruin the business, could put a lot of employees out of business or out of employment, and of course, affect the owner's future estate planning. So if we start looking at this, it's important to know 100% of business owners are going to exit their business. So as working with closely held businesses, those business owners are going to leave the business and transition it. It's just, is it on their terms or is it unplanned? But 50% of those are a forced exit. So half of those transitions are going to be an unplanned involuntary exit from the business. So if we look at some of the statistics, 80 to 90% of the owner's wealth is trapped in their company. So when you start looking at the estate planning, the future business planning, most of our business owners, the vast majority of their wealth is tied up in that business. 60% of the owners don't understand their exit options. So if you think about that, this is a great place to be working with business owners because they're looking for the help, but most of them with their current advisors are not getting any options to help plan for that future exit. 80% have not engaged with any kind of formal transition advisory team. So if you're looking, they're again looking for places to prospect and looking for business owners that need help. This transition area is wide open for us to be able to step in and help advise a client and give them good options. 75% of owners regret selling their business a year after selling this. So think about this. A business owner has started a business, has built that up over 10, 20, 30, 40 years, whatever it is. This is part of their life. And if they haven't properly planned for it, the buyer's regret, and in this case, the seller's regret of, I sold my company, now what? And many times we talk about retirement planning. Well, a lot of our business owners don't want to retire. They know they're going to transition this business, or they should know that they are going to transition this business. The question is, how is that going to happen? And if we can plan that far enough in advance, the seller's going to be able to understand what those options are for them, for their employees, for their other partners, and it's going to be a good situation, not a regretful situation. 40% of owners want to sell within the next 5 years. This is a great runway for us. If we have 5 years to help a business owner plan the exit from their business, that gives us the opportunity to make sure their financial statements are in order, their accounting's in order, if they need to increase their EBITDA for the sell, if they need to go out and figure out, potential, buyers for their business. All of this, that 5 year runway is a great time for us to start the planning. So let's look at the 5 Ds of the unplanned business exit. Of course, the easy one, if easy for us to plan for, but it's death. What happens if our business owner dies? Well, if you think about this, the owner dies. Was the owner the key driver of this business? If that happens, that business can easily fail. If this is a key investor in the business and the other partners don't have the ability to buy them out. So if you start looking at death, this is one where if we're planning, we can look at this in a way, get their buy sell agreement in place, get the life insurance that's needed to cover that buyout. If not, upon a death, and this is one where I see multiple times, the owner dies. Now they didn't have their planning in place, and now the spouse becomes a partner in the business. Well, that spouse may be a good complement to the business, may have absolutely nothing to do with the business. Now we've got a partner that's not effectively helping the business. So it can become a big problem here if we don't plan ahead from both a management standpoint, a production standpoint, And a big one is the cash flow for the other future owners of the business. Right next to that, and I think a harder one to plan for, is disability. I think this is difficult because there again, we see this with long-term care. People don't want to plan for a future disability. That's just something that is hard for them to imagine. So if you think about this, let's say it's 50-50 owners, and they're both pulling their weight in the business, and one of those owners gets dementia. Now, if they don't have a buy-sell agreement that addresses this, now the well partner is going to be doing 100% of the work for only 50% of the profit because we haven't planned and can't possibly, there's no way to effectively exit this business, and it can create a big problem for those left in running the business. Disability, we need to address it. We need to address if we need disability buyouts. All of this needs to be addressed from both a uh, perspective, you know, for buying out the business, for running the business, and also funding that buyout. Divorce, and divorce can cause a big problem. I mean, it's one where what if the spouse that's not in the business gets half of the business? Now we have a partner in this business that's not effectively there as a manager or a contributor to the business, but they're now an owner. They have no allegiance maybe to the business and now no allegiance to the employees. They're just looking to spend this out and get cash. There again, we can easily address this in a buy-sell agreement, but if that buy-sell agreement doesn't have the proper triggers and doesn't address divorce, we've got a future problem with the business in future operations and future funding. Disagreement. And I've seen this multiple times over my career where we haven't addressed how to handle a disagreement among the partners. Think about this. If you have 50-50 owners of an S corporation, most likely that says for any decisions made by the company, it is a majority that has to vote in favor of that change. Well, if it's 50-50, that means both partners have to agree or we cannot make a change to the business. A lot of times we can't call a meeting, we can't vote. So all of a sudden it's just that, corporate law says if you can't make a change, then it's status quo. You just keep going as if you're going forward with the same agreement. The problem is if there's a disagreement among the partners, how do we address it? This is a key, especially if we have two 50-50 owners. How do we break the tie? And what happens if this is a material question? There again, day to day, minor disagreements we can live with, but if these are major things affecting the ongoing operation of the business, um, we could be stuck forever not being able to change the direction of the company because we can't vote. And so the buy sell needs to address this. Maybe we get a tiebreaker and put somebody on the board. Instead of two board members, we have three. All of this can be addressed, but we need to make sure that the business owners are thinking this through. Finally, financial distress. And we saw a lot of this, through COVID. We saw this back in 2008 with the whole financial sector dropping. This is a problem because if we've got one owner that's flush with cash and we have another owner that's just living day to day, what happens when that business needs a cash infusion? Well, if they want to maintain their 50-50, then both of them need to, put money in. But what if one can't? What if one cannot get any additional bank financing? All this needs to be addressed so that we don't have a business that's struggling financially that doesn't know how to, get those cash infusions from the owners. If it doesn't come, the business could be in trouble and ongoing operations could cease. Let's put a happy end to this. Here's what I know. We have a lot of tools in our toolbox to address in buy sell planning, helping our owners understand their options, We need to start approaching business owners, helping them understand their options, help them be aware of what's coming if they don't plan. But if they do plan ahead, they can have a successful transition of their business. I appreciate everybody getting on. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. If not, we'll go and talk again next week. Thank you.